What's going on, guys? Welcome back. So you want to master the art of move decks, right? It's probably why you're here. You have a couple of options to learn the most complex, complicated archetype in Snap. Door number one, you can blow about 3,000 cubes and learn it for yourself, or you allow this dumbass to do it for you. So let's get started. Today, we're going to look at all of the move cards in the game and the role that they play, combos you're going to need to learn and master, as well as locations and where to play them, and most important, a turn-by-turn strategy to put it all together. So let's begin this journey with the move cards. Odds are you have half these guys still with a common gray border on them. You probably don't play them much. Hell, half of these aren't even move cards. Somebody at second dinner wanted to go home early and put the keyword to go ahead and just have move, which includes some of these buttes. So in the archetype, we're going to start with the move for power cards, the ones that need or should be moved to ramp up their ridiculous power potential. Now, these are the ones that you probably know, the stars of move, but I don't know about you. Typically, I like to try to get these as big as possible. My caveman brain is bigger number equal better card, but sometimes even after just one move, that's good enough and they should stay put. You see, and that's the trap, the number one mistake. A lot of people will be moving these cards willy-nilly just to get power, and then you end up clogged or some mistake, and you're not actually optimizing what you can do with a move deck. Now, first up is Human Torch, and yeah, this guy got a lot better after Ghost Spider came out. Mainly, look out for Killmongers, Sarah Surfer, Sarah Control, those style of decks, destroy decks if they have a Nova. Then you don't want to overcommit here. Definitely, guys, learn to play Human Torch, then Iron Fist, and then play your Hulkbuster on top of Torch. It'll merge with them and then move them. So you're going to really utilize your movement cards and get him to 12 power. If you're playing Battle Mode or the new Conquest and you realize they don't have a Killmonger, then yeah, go crazy with this guy. Very solid card. Even a 1/4 with just Heimdall is still a good stat value. Now, Dagger's definitely the most slept on of the bunch of all these move for power cards. Definitely played better late rather than early. Let your opponent commit to lanes that they want to win, and then you can simply challenge the lane that they go all in on. You're going to have a 2/10 card to compete with a lot of them out there. When she's played early, they can kind of work around it, and it's not near as surprising. Typically, I try to play her on the end of turn 5 and then do something with Ghost Spider and or Heimdall, or on turn 6 with her and like Doctor Strange or Iron Fist. Now, the same tooltip applies for Multiple Man that I said on Human Torch. He's kind of a tough card to manage, but I think if you have Torch, which you should now with Ghost Spider, he makes more sense in the deck because Hulkbuster should be in there with Torch most of the time anyway. He can clog up lanes. You need to know when to identify when to play him and when to go all in, and what cards you need to have in your hand to make it work. But if you have the right ones, like a Hulkbuster and Cloak, and you can move these around the right way, which I'll cover in the turn-by-turn, he could be a win condition all within himself. Now, lastly, Kraven is not a move for power, but move to power, and I think he's the biggest skill gap in move decks. More games you play, the better you're going to get with this card, and the better you get with him, the better you're going to get in general. Now, I don't have him suggested in a lot of move decks because of that, but there's a couple of small interactions you need to be aware of with Kraven. Now, first of all, it's how does Marvel Snap resolve its turn order? For instance, if you have Cloak laid down and you have Kraven in your hand, which you should, you don't want to play Kraven early. You want to play Kraven down before you move those cards to Cloak, because if you do it the other way around and move the cards with Cloak and then play Kraven, he's not going to get the +2 power per move. In the same light, let's say you have Kraven in the middle lane, Nightcrawler on the left, and you play, I don't know, Heimdall on the left, and then you move the Nightcrawler to the middle. The Heimdall is going to trigger, and it's not going to count that Nightcrawler, so Kraven will only get the points from moving to the location, and whatever cards follow him after that. So that's kind of how he works. It takes a lot to learn him. Now, as a side note, guys, Magneto, one of the best cards to play on top of Kraven. You're going to move a bunch of cards. He's going to boost up Kraven, and you have a 12 power card in Magneto. Most of the time, you're going to win that lane definitely with this card, and there's a lot of powerful forecasts. Also, Captain Marvel can calculate what will happen when she moves to Kraven, and so that's the same light is going to work, and you can get a little bit of extra, like a 5/8 power for Captain Marvel. So it's good to keep these little interactions in mind. Playing Wave and then Arrow, you're going to get essentially a like 10 power Arrow. So it's kind of crazy how good Kraven is, and it's very important on you learning the card and the interactions. Now, Vulture is like a lane winner in himself, guys. Like, this card is extremely strong and definitely the one that you don't need him with the other move for power cards. Let him do his own thing. Why I like him the most is he can be a 3/8 to avoid Shang-Chi, and then on the last turn with Heimdall, you can boost him up to that 12 power state. Or if you do something like Iron Fist Vulture on turn 4, and then you Ghost Spider that, and you play Cloak on turn 5, and then you move him, and then you play Heimdall. He's like a 22 power card, and so the card can get to enough power to win by himself, and then the other plays that you did prior to turn 4 could and should be enough to win the other lane. So really good card here. Probably the best as far as single power goes. Most of the time, even moving him once, maybe twice is going to be enough. I probably, for the most part, play and move him once, and I let Heimdall or whatever my turn 6 play do the rest. Now, next up, we have the move enablers, the cards that help other cards move. Obviously, we're going to quickly cover these in the best practices and little tidbits you should know. Now, Iron Fist is a card that should almost never, and I mean never, be played on turn 1. You could do the interaction we talked about with Human Torch and Multiple Man, or better yet, save him for the end turns. He's your cheapest card that's going to give you the movement ability, and so you can do a lot of crazy combos going into the late turns. Also, just by playing him and Vulture, that's always a good combo on turn 4, as long as you have other cards to follow up with them. Now, guys, Cloak was another card I was kind of afraid to play, right? You give your opponent the same advantage, and so mastering them is very important. Now, first of all, when you play Cloak, you don't want to play him early most of the time. The 4 power is tempting. Don't do it unless you absolutely have to. You want to play your move cards in a location that your opponent isn't trying to win, right? And what you do with Cloak is you simply play him on top of there once they have fully committed or committed big cards that they're really depending on. And then you move your cards over to that lane. They can't move a lot. And then you end up taking that lane and probably taking the win with you. Now, on top of that, I love playing Cloak on turn 5. And then you can play Wave with him. It's my favorite combo right now because on turn 6, you can take advantage of the movement and you get to play only one card. Most of the time, that's going to result in a win as well. So there's a lot of ways to play Cloak, utilize him. You can play him to move cards, and then you have just Multiple Man, and you can play Hulkbuster. Very strong card to get used to and play him right away. The more games you get with him, the better. Ghost Spider, our newest card, and she is what is single-handedly making move competitive. We have another cheap option with Iron Fist and Cloak to move cards, but more importantly, she carries the same weight as Doctor Strange. You can hand select which card you move and probably has the most control over that out of just about any card outside of Iron Fist. Now, what's cool about her is because she's only 2 cost, most of the time I look to play her around turn 5, turn 4, so that I can combo her with the other cards that we have. Playing her on turn 2 just never feels great. I will play, Human Torch in her every now and then, but for the most part, I like to combo her on turn 5 and 6. Really strong, guys. There's other things you can do with the card. Kind of like Iron Fist, you could play Arrow Down or Doc Ock or any card, and then you can move that card over to get that extra power, right? So Doctor Strange, one of my favorite MCU characters, is a bit weird in Snap for his cost and power and like what he does. Now, my favorite use of him is to surprise the opponent on turn 6 and turn 3. Those are the only times I really play him. And what I like to do is you can take Gamma Lab Hulks, you can take Monster Island. But my favorite is you kind of half commit to a lane with a weak card and your best card, let's say Vulture, and your opponent's going to stop playing on that location. They're going to assume you've already won it, right? And then what you do is you play Doctor Strange, you take your best card over from that location. At the very last second, you can win another location with not a lot of power, and then you have whatever that big card was to aid you. So oftentimes giving up Monster Island, but then you guarantee success, or you can kind of dodge of Shang-Chi from a Sarah control on turn 6. Those are the best uses for the card, but I think he needs to be a 3-4 or like a 2-3. Probably a 3-4 would make the most sense to give him a bit of a boost. Heimdall, the king of move. He's like the meme card at this point. On turn 6, it's a 99.9% chance you're going to play Heimdall, and it's for good reason. He powers up all of your cards at once, but if you don't play him, you can oftentimes win the right lane with like no power. You can abandon the left lane, and then you get the cheeky win. No matter with all these new combos with Ghost Spider, Doctor Strange, Juggernaut, people will still always assume out of pure habit that Heimdall is going to be played. And so for that reason, the more you play with move decks, the better you're going to get to discern if you should play Heimdall. And it's not even about playing him, but it's where to play him is usually the best point about it. Playing him on the right side stack with like Multiple Man can be really good because you can win that location. Or you can abandon a location they think you're going to win. So those are the like pure move cards, but obviously we have other cards that move as well and other cards that just work in move decks. Typically when you build a move deck, this is going to be the cards that you work with, and you have a couple of spots left over to do some combos. And you're going to notice that here in a second when we look at the decks. Now, as far as move card popularity, this is the breakdown on data right now in the current season and the latest patch with Ghost Spider move decks and the cards that the large majority of people are playing. If there's one thing for certain on this graphic, you can tell that everybody has their own kind of style of play, and there's not as much as a weight on certain cards as we have seen in other archetypes. Now, we have a few more cards to talk about, guys, that are outside of the move archetype. In fact, outside of that move shell, we have a lot of cards that you want to play in your move decks to help complement those cards because they already have so much power they can gain. We want to help them gain that power or counter the other decks on the ladder. Now, we start with the move disrupts. These are the most common cards played in move decks because A, they have great power. They can synergize with things like Miles Morales and Kraven, but also Galactus is obviously everywhere, and Polaris, Juggernaut, and Arrow can all help counter the deck. Now, for me personally, I like to play Arrow in my wave decks, and other than that, I have Juggernaut in a large majority of my move decks to play late game, either turn 5 or 6. Now, the next set of cards we have are the counter cards, and you can play cards like Killmonger, Wave, Storm. They're not in here, but Shang-Chi and obviously Cosmo could also be put in this deck as well. Guys, all these cards are going to help you counter the opponent in some way. Killmonger is obviously good if you're not depending on your Human Torch. A lot of powerful one-drops right now, and he can help get rid of those. Wave for so many reasons that we've talked about already, and we'll talk about more so in the decks and turn by turn to come. And Storm obviously creates a location you shut down, and you can easily get to. Now, there is some risk there with all of those high Evo decks and Jeffs and control decks, but still, you can get to those locations fairly easy. You have plenty of ways to get there when the opponent is going to struggle. Next section we have is the Extra Spice card, something to just get your move deck really popping in power like it doesn't need it already. Iron Lad is one of my personal favorites, especially if you have Howard the Duck. I've had plenty of success with him in the move decks, and he can definitely surprise the opponent. I like Iron Man, Doctor Doom in these decks, and then if he copies Human Torch, obviously, or Multiple Man, you pretty much get the win. Also, we have Hulkbuster, Forge, Nakia, Okoye, that's for Human Torch, and Multiple Man, of course. And the newly reworked Beast, the bounce move deck was the best one out there. I think it's knocked down just a peg with the rework, but it's still very reliable and a strong deck. And then lastly, we have the Dependable Power. This is mainly about Angela and playing your move cards on top of Angela for just a little bit more, well, dependable power, right? We have Jeff, Vision, Nightcrawler that you can also play on Angela and then move to another location. And what that does is you build up all this power with Angela. You can move these other cards to locations that need them. And then you have the movement cards for extra power. You're going to be moving cards constantly, obviously, so Miles Morales is a card that a lot of people like to play in their move decks as well. And America Chavez for the deck thinning and just 9 power flat on turn 6. Now let's look at some movement decks. Remember, it doesn't matter how good these stats are. If you don't know how to play movement, you're still going to suck. So it's important that the turn by turn is something you focus on. I'll explain exactly what to do and where to play them on every single turn. First of all, we have I Like the Wave You Move. This is probably the easiest deck to pilot in regards to move decks, maybe outside of the Kraven. Guys, very strong deck here with a lot of dependable power, and this can teach you the ropes on how to play. And we have America Chavez to thin everything out and get more move cards. We have Wave that we can play on turn 5 alongside Cloak, Ghost Spider, or Dagger, or even Kraven. And then we follow that up on turn 6 with either Heimdall, Arrow, or again, America Chavez. Now, some people elect not to play Chavez. You can throw in, let's say, Juggernaut instead. You can throw in Multiple Man, Hulkbuster. There's a lot of ways to play this style of deck, and there's a ton of combos to pull off, guys. And you have an answer for pretty much everything out there in the meta. Now, another version of that deck that is insanely good is the Boosted Move deck. This is the one I'll be piloting later on using Multiple Man and or Human Torch, depending on the deck you're going up against. Combined with Hulkbuster can be nasty. We have a lot of move options in the deck with Doctor Strange, Iron Fist, Ghost Spider, and Cloak. And then you're looking to do the same thing on turn 5 and 6. This particular deck, 1900 games, it has about a 57% win rate. The Juggernaut version has way more games, about 3,000, and still very strong stats. So a little bit harder to pilot, in my opinion, than the first deck, but it can be a lot of fun. Multiple Man, again, is just so deceiving. People just all the time snap on it and have no idea what's about to hit them. Great consistency. You just need to know exactly when to play each card, and the turn by turn is going to cover that. Now, for the last deck, we have Gamora's Pryde, and I got to shout out Molt. He was the one that I saw construct the deck. Not a lot of games to be tested here, only 640 as of late. But man, the stats here are awesome. 57% win rate. You got 0.69 average cubes gain. That's insane. In this deck, it is pretty dang good. I have a Angela move deck that uses Vision and Nightcrawler and Jeff. And this looks to do similar things by using Kitty Pryde to build up your Angela. And then you can shut down the lanes early with Storm. You have Juggernaut to control. And then you have Gamora to play alongside your Kitty Pryde on turn 6 if all goes according to plan. Now, clearly, storming early also is going to help doing Juggernaut or Gamora. Your Angela is going to be built up so much already. You have movement combos to go off of. There's a lot of things working in this deck, and I like it. I think this shows how much variance there is in move. There's Shuri decks that you can use to build up big Kitty Prydes. And you can move those over with Ghost Spider. So this is just the beginning, and it has me super excited for the decks to come. All right, cool. We're going to go ahead and head into the turn by turn. It's on the lengthy side, but I think it's important to really get a gist on how movement decks work. So many micro decisions that matter. I'll be using a multiple man as an example in the deck, but this kind of applies for any deck that we just talked about. All right, so now let's head into what is probably the most complicated turn-by-turn strategy I have done yet because of all the different things that you can do with move and the way you can move your cards around to match enemies' locations. Now, starting on turn 1, guys, you're probably going to be skipping turn 1 most of the time in a move deck. Now, if you have a 1-cost card like Kitty, Nebula, something like that, feel free to play it. But other than that, guys, Human Torch is probably the only other card that you want to play on this turn. You don't want to play Iron Fist. We want to save that card that is a move enabler for other turns. Now, one thing that is different with move opposed to other types of decks is that it really matters, obviously, where you play your cards. So we're going to be looking to play most of our cards in the rightmost location. It doesn't matter if we don't know what it is. We can go ahead and play in them now because we can either move the cards. However, if you do have Human Torch, Multiple Man, and Ghost and Cloak in that starting hand, a mixture of the bunch, you can also play it in the left lane. That's probably going to be best. You already know the location if it's safe to play in, and then you can move these cards over for more flexibility and potential to build their power. Or we're going to retreat by turn 3 if things don't look good location-wise. Now on turn 2, guys, we have actually a lot of different move cards that are 2 costs, and it's going to depend on what is in your hand. So we're going to play Multiple Man here or Human Torch if we do have Hulkbuster in hand for turn 3. That is definitely the number 1 combo I look to play on turn 2 most of the time. If you have Vulture in hand, you can play Iron Fist on this turn. You can play Jeff if you want to kind of stay under the radar. One thing that's great about move is that if you don't show them you're playing a move deck, they can overcommit into the left lane, which most of the time we are going to end up winning. If you have nothing else to play, you can play Dagger, or you can play Kraven in either the middle location or the leftmost location, depending on where your opponent's played and how everything's looking at this point. Now, as a last option, you might be tempted to do a Ghost Spider if you played Human Torch on the first turn, but this is definitely going to be used better for other turns, so save on to Ghost Spider for now. Now, turn 3 is one of the more important turns. At this point, we can see every single location. If we have an advantage or a disadvantage, and we just talked about locations earlier in the guide. If you have locations that are an advantage, like Death's Domain, this is where you want to snap most of the time. Even if your hand, you don't know what you're going to get, you're probably going to have a leg up on the opponent. But the disadvantage of having something where you can't play maybe a 1 or 2 cost card, or there's some restriction going on, it's probably best if your opponent has already snapped to retreat or just start coming up with a separate game plan. Now, as far as the turn goes, I like to play, obviously, Hulkbuster on our Human Torch or Multiple Man at this point, setting us up for the rest of the game. Also, Vulture, obviously, is going to be the play if you did play Iron Fist last turn. You can always do Iron Fist as well as Dagger if your opponent has flooded the board early or there's locations that have put out cards early on the board. If you only have, let's say, Dagger or Torch or something to move, you can definitely use Doctor Strange if you so choose at this point. But other than that, those are going to be the main things you want to do, as well as the other combos we talked about in the earlier turns. Now, turn 4 and 5 are the most complex by far. You obviously know at this point how locations look. Opposed to most decks, turn 6 is complicated, but on this one, we have fairly some straightforward options that, again, are probably not what you think. All right, guys, so on turn 4, we're almost always going to be looking to play Cloak and or some cards that can get our other cards moving at this point. So again, we should be playing and focusing on that right and kind of middle location. We don't want to clog ourselves early. And all the turns you've done thus far should be primarily in the middle and right location. Now, with our brand new card in Ghost Spider, this is definitely going to be what you want to play if you did play Human Torch and Hulkbuster, or if you had something like a Dagger down last turn. Anything that you want to move again, like Multiple Man or Vulture. Remember, our Ghost Spider is going to pull whatever we played last, and so this is going to come in huge favor, and typically we want to probably try to pull them in the rightmost lane. Now, alongside Ghost Spider, I like to play at this point maybe Cloak. If you do have Cloak, you can then Ghost Spider, let's say, something on the left location or in the middle, and you Cloak on the right location so that we can move those cards there on turn 5. That's typically how you're going to get the most power on the board by turn 6. If you don't have the Season Pass card, this is where you're going to look to play something like Kraven and Cloak, or maybe Dagger and Cloak for some quick power points. Obviously, some nice combos like Iron Fist and Vulture is perfect on curve energy and great power there. Human Torch, Hulkbuster together on one turn is super advantageous. If you do have Ghost Spider, we can play that on turn 5. And finally, if you do have a bit more of a cheeky deck, this is where you're going to play, your Iron Lad or one of those cards that are a bit more expensive. Now, turn 5 is my main snapping turn for the deck. On turn 3, I like to do it if I have great location luck. But on turn 5, if your opponent has committed to the left side very heavy, you're probably good to snap. You're going to win that left side most of the time. If the middle is heavy, then, you can just look at what you have going on. If you have Human Torch or Dagger and they're going to build up that power, then it's probably safe to snap as well. If they're not on the left side and things are looking grim in the middle, you probably want to err on the side of caution. And obviously, guys, this turn is going to largely depend on what you did on turn 4. However, as we talked about already in the guide, Wave is one of my favorite cards to have in a move deck. And playing Wave alongside Dagger, or even better, Ghost Spider to follow up what you did on turn 4, followed by Wave, is an awesome thing to set you up for turn 6, limiting your opponent and a ton of decks out there to only one card. And that one card for you is most likely Heimdall, right? So you're definitely setting yourself up for success. Now, in addition to that, the other combos you can play are things like Killmonger and Cloak. You can play Wave and Kraven on the left side. This is also really good to set you up if you do have Heimdall. On this turn, you can pull off the Wombo combo of Vulture and Ghost. You can do Iron Fist, Torch, and Ghost Spider. Cloak and Strange is always solid to, move maybe that Human Torch and Dagger again. And then you have Cloak to follow up another move on turn 6. Again, just make sure you're moving these in the right locations. Saving room either on the left side and or just playing Cloak on spaces where your opponent maybe has committed to, or where if you move cards, you're definitely going to overpower them, even if they decide to move some cards themselves. Now, outside of this, you could also do a Cloak and Dagger combo together, Cloak and Vulture. A lot of cards we have here are going to be 5 energy combos, so it's going to work to our advantage. If you don't have something like Heimdall, you can always do maybe Juggernaut and Cloak if you happen to play that version of the deck. And or I do like playing Arrow if I expect them to play Galactus, or I'm trying to mess up a combo they're trying to do with, let's say, Wong. Now, turn 6, guys, pretty much everybody is going to expect you're playing Heimdall. I mean, 99% of the time, that's probably what they think, right? If you did play Wave, Heimdall is usually the good option. However, play it out in your head. Try to expect what your opponent is going to play, and if you think a Heimdall may not beat that, then just err on the side of caution. Now, I like to play Heimdall typically on a location either all the way to the right to put a little power there, or if you can just do the math and you can see what is going to be missing, you want to just win 2 of the locations, so have Heimdall beef up one of your lesser powered locations. But all in all, this is where playing Move is really going to help you out. You're going to get a good knowledge and repetition of when to play Heimdall and when to play one of these other combos that your opponents just don't expect. Now, with Ghost Spider, we have new access to a lot of combos like Human Torch, followed by Hulkbuster, followed by Ghost Spider. You can do Iron Fist, Vulture, then Ghost Spider. Guys, this is stacking up major amounts of points on whatever location we decide. Usually, I like the right side because they're expecting that. Arrow, if you just played Wave, is also a win condition. They can only play 1 card. You have Arrow. If you're already winning 2 of those locations, then you can just play it on the location you're not. Juggernaut and Doctor Strange is a huge winner. It's kind of the same as Arrow. You play Jug on the location they want to play on the most, and you have Doctor Strange to move one of your beefed up move cards. And then, of course, you can always do the Iron Fist, Dagger, and Doctor Strange, or throw Killmonger out there if you have him as well. So we have a lot of combos outside of Heimdall. A lot of the times, Heimdall is going to be the move to do, but it just depends on what you did play on turn 5 and what your opponent has on turn 4. It can be pretty tough to do these quick calculations, but just know for the most part, left side is probably going to be your most winning lane, and middle is going to be looking pretty good as well. And we just played Cloak most likely the turn before, and that's going to allow us to just beef up our cards even more so very easily, and then we can Heimdall on top of that or do our move combos. Now, lastly, guys, just a couple things to just know when playing this deck, right? First of all, if you think you're playing a Sarah Control, a Surfer deck, Killmonger exists, and don't put all of your stock in that Human Torch that you spent building up, because it could die very easily. Obviously, things like Cosmo exist. There's a lot of cards that can mess you up, so knowing the deck that the opponent is playing is obviously going to make a big difference. So if it hasn't been said enough, locations, locations, locations. So knowing the location disadvantages and advantages, and knowing where to play your move cards and not running out of space. All right, guys, I know there's a lot to chew on here, and you probably haven't retained half of it, but we're going to hop into a couple of battles, and I'll show you how I pilot the deck against general decks out there on the ladder. That being said, it's kind of tough to show you the deck against the right decks or my losses and not have a video that's like 2 hours long. So with that, when we do reach 100,000 subs, I'm going to have another channel that's going to have all of my VODs or my streaming content there so that you can watch as many battles as you guys want to and how that deck works. In a perfect world, it's going to be the deck guide nice and short. And then if you want to see how it's executed, you can check out the other channel. So if you watch and you haven't subbed yet, go ahead and hit that down below to help reach the goal. We're going to go and play the boosted move deck. And this is the one with Human Torch, Multiple Man, and Hulkbuster, and how I pilot myself. Alrighty, Wick. All right, man. Golly, Wick. It's coming out hot. We'll stick with it. Wicket. That was lame. Okay, so Isle of Silence, first location. Second location is Asteroid M. This is a, like, just the best location you can get if you're playing Vulture. Feels really good, guys. Feels really good. All right, so this is kind of an interesting lineup. What do we do with the cards that we have? And Human Torch is definitely going to be what we elect to play. We'll go left side. We have a lot of room to move this guy around. So I'm gonna go with, I suppose, Ghost Spider here. I don't love the play. A little early to do it, but that'll work. Okay, he's gonna wave early. Oh boy, here comes the Galactus. So guys, this is what I love about the deck. This deck is built to beat most of the general ladder on your way up. And this is either Doctor Doom or Galactus. It's almost, guys, it's almost never Sandman anymore. So we're going to just play my wife right in the middle. Beautiful. Beautiful play. And we're going to snap. And we're going to watch this guy, watch this Galactus go in the middle and be really sad. Now, when you snap back like I did, they're getting smarter. They kind of pull back their play. So typically I like to snap later. They get smarter, but this guy, if that's not a Doc Ock, it's going to be a rough day. Yep. Okay there. And that's a GG. Mostly. It's going to be pretty tough for that guy to come back from this one. Especially because we have the old Wombo combo, right? So we're going to Cloak left side. And we are going to wave probably over here. And GG. Don't Doc Ock. Don't do it. See, but I can move that Hobgoblin. Yeah, so we can both play one card, and how we're going to win is we're going to give up on the left lane. And you would think I'm going to play Heimdall, but that would kind of screw us up a little bit. So we don't want to do that. We're actually going to play Vulture over here, and it's going to whip him in the middle and give him 8, which is 19. He can't win that. I don't think he has anything to win here. That's 7. So this is going to be a very easy win against a Galactus deck. I don't know what he's doing there. It's surely not enough to win whatever we just did. And he played to death. So that's a perfect example how to beat a Galactus with this deck. If you don't pull arrow and they play wave and they snap, you leave. That easy. If you don't play the multiple man, which I don't always suggest playing this deck, then you can build in an extra counter, Polaris, other options like that. All right, so a little boosted move action. Now, I am convinced this is not the best move deck, guys. Multiple Man and Hulkbuster. But I do find it a lot of fun and surprisingly surprising, if you can say. Because people see Multiple Man and they snap. So we're going to skip turn 1. Nothing to do there. Turn 2, pretty bad draw. And we've got an Invisible Woman deck. Is no longer Invisible Woman because he has Dark Dimension. All right, so Isle of Silence, and let's see what we're working with, guys. Do a few things here. We can go double Hulk, but we would get rid of 2 move options. That's pretty dang bad. We can close them off on turn 6, so that's going to work out okay. I suppose what we'll do is we will play Iron Fist this turn, get ourselves at least 1 Hulk, and then we can maybe move him around, see if we can cloak him to a location where he's already full. Or I can just Doctor Strange him to another location and let him have this one, right? So we did get our Cloak. We do have our Vulture. And he is already snapping. That is an early snap, my guy. I don't mind Doctor Strange over here for a little bit of a surprise move. But for now, we're going to obviously just go ahead and get our Vulture up. Okay. And look at that. We got a Vulture Hulk. My gosh. Iron Fist has been super buggy lately. All right. So it's turn 5. This is going to be obviously where we want to do our wave plus another card. And that's going to be most likely Cloak. We could go ahead and play... Ghost Spider, get Vulture over here, and then wave, which is an option. I'm a little fearful of what he can do, but I think we're going to go and do just that. Now, the issue is he played where I didn't want him to play. I'm a little worried about what he could have played there. Obviously, could be a pretty big card. I think he thinks that I'm going to Heimdall and challenge this middle location, which is not what we're going to do. The arrow does nothing because he's already winning 1 location. And he's not going to challenge this location. I think I'm just going to play Strange, guys, and we will pull the Vulture over. And that should be enough to beat whatever he plays over there. This is what I like about this deck. If he challenges this side, good for him. I think he's going to overthink this and think I'm doing a lot more than I am. He does play on this left side. Pretty smart of him. And he'll have to beat an 18. Oh, boy. That's going to be hella. Oh, boy. Oh. Get wrecked. Okay. I did not deserve to win that one, but that is why I love move, man. It's why I love move. I guess we have Arrow, Multiple Man, Iron Fist, and Dagger. First location is Stark Tower. Not a bad location for Multiple Man if we're able to build him up and move on turn 6. And Murder World in the middle, which isn't too bad either. So we're going to play probably Multiple Man. Here is what I think is a decent play. Could do Iron Fist, then Vulture, but for now I think this is going to be our play. Gamma Lab is definitely tempting. Hulkbuster's also nice. It's kind of tough. If we get a Gamma Lab going, the thing about that is, ooh, we could Heimdall the Hulk over, which is kind of crazy. So I think we're going to go and play Dagger and Iron Fist. We'll get double the Hulks. He's playing a Sarah Miracle deck, so we need to keep in mind that he's going to have Shang-Chi, which probably means that those Hulks are going to die, and that's going to be pretty tough. So we need to be a little bit careful there. I'm going to go ahead and Doctor Strange now, just in case. Do we think he'll Shang-Chi this turn is the question, or do we save this as a surprise play? It's kind of a tough decision. I'm going to bank that he's not going to Shang-Chi yet. All right, we made the right decision. Okay, so we're heading to turn 5. We can arrow this turn. Oh, man, this is going to be a GG. We can arrow this turn, which is going to mess up a Shang-Chi. If we get wave here, that'd be great. We got Heimdall is an option. I'm thinking we just simply play Arrow, and then we play Heimdall on the last turn. We want to make sure we have priority. We're going to go and play Arrow, probably in the middle. I want to play her on the left side to get the bonus, but I foresee this being probably better, because I don't think he's going to card dump right now. There's Sarah. We knew that was coming. Gonna whip her to the middle, and then now we have priority, so this is good too. So what we're gonna do, the multiple man's nice as well. We're gonna go ahead and, so Doctor Strange would be messed up because of this arrow, so I'm thinking we're gonna simply just play Heimdall. He's gonna, I don't foresee him playing Shang-Chi middle. If he does, he's truly just impressive. This should win it. Heimdall left side should win it. Yep, he didn't play anything there. That one card to the right is Shang-Chi. Read this guy like a friggin' book. He's not going to beat us here. Could have snapped. Ooh, he did Enchantress instead. Interesting. And then he played Killmonger. So it looks like he even pulled Shang-Chi. We were worried about nothing the whole time. Bada bing, bada boom. Got the win. So kind of anticlimactic. Would have been cooler. Didn't even use our multiple man that was boosted up to 9. Could have had some really fun stuff if we didn't have Gamma Lab pulled up, but we still, we got a 2-cuber. Let's see what you got. We have Vulture, Dagger, Hulkbuster, and Iron Fist, so pretty good. Opening hand, if I say so myself. Human Torch and or Multiple Man would be great. Would have been better if we had them in hand for Wakanda Embassy. We'll play Dagger now. Doesn't matter all too much. Probably play either Vulture or Iron Fist, depending on what we get next turn. He's going to Psylocke, so what? We maybe a negative deck. And we have Space Throne, so kind of cool. Let's go to play... we have a few things we could play. I don't mind that, but I think we might just play Human Torch by himself. And he plays Darkhawk with his Psylocke. Interesting stuff. Let's go ahead now and play Iron Fist, followed by Hulkbuster. And we're going to definitely outbeat his Darkhawk. Also, the Wakanda Embassy hitting Hulkbuster is just as good as the Torch, right? All right, so double. Wow. This is kind of wild. So get this. We are going to be putting 16 and taking the +3. We might be able to beat him here on this left side. Look at that, man. That's insane. Okay. So it's turn 5. We can either wave now, which I think he might do better with, or we just assume whatever he plays next can't beat out Arrow, which I think could be the case. I don't hate that. I don't hate that, or I don't hate playing Arrow here. Either way, let's go to play Arrow right side. Yep, well, whatever he was going to play, he obviously didn't want to do it there. I don't want to snap. I don't feel fully confident. That's a bummer. He's going to retreat at this point, is what I would assume. And even more so, we've already won the right side, so we're going to simply just take our Human Torch. I mean, maybe he's got Killmonger, maybe. But this is why I love Move, man. There's so many like little things that you can do to ensure the win. So yeah, he's giving us the fist bump. So that was a nice W. Another reason why I like Arrow. It can be a bit tough whether you play Wave or Arrow on 5. Sometimes just playing Wave and then Arrow works. We just didn't know what he was going to try to pull off. We could have played Wave risky enough on like Space Throne and then Arrow to the middle, and we would have the 2 locations. So a couple of things we could have done. All right, guys, good old-fashioned cozy video the size of a Lord of the Ring movie. Hopefully you learned everything that you could for movement, and you learned a lot more coming into this video than you did before. I want you guys to tell me how movement is going for you with Conquest coming out. I think it's one of the better archetypes to switch up what you're doing, and it can take on most of the meta at the moment. And if you have any tips that I didn't mention, drop them down below as well. Wish you luck out there in the ladder and on Conquest, and as always, until the next one, happy snapping.